Well, this morning, if you're new with us, normally we don't all wear jerseys. We definitely don't normally wear Steelers jerseys because I don't know why anybody would want to do that. But, I'm sorry. I'm always surprised there's so many Steelers fans. In fact, could you just stand up in this place if you're a Steelers fan? I want to be sure there's more Browns fans here in a second. This is all that'll say. Wow, that's a lot. There's like 20. Okay, now real fast. I'm a little nervous. You can go ahead and be seated. Could we have all of our Browns fans stand up? Okay, there's more Browns fans. Barely, but I think I can count it. There's more Browns fans, so I just wanted to know what kind of church we're running here. And I will say, last week, some of you don't care. Don't worry, we're going to get in the Word. No worries. But last week, football started again, and I have never been, truthfully, in my life, so excited for Browns football. Pumped. I was so ready. Got home a little bit after it started so I could watch it recorded. It was great. It was really great for a very short amount of time. And then it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think I went in a dark place there for a few minutes, like this whole season. Like, what is going on? We're supposed to win the well, that's a little strong, but we're supposed to win some games at least. And after that game, I'm not even sure. Now, I believe tomorrow night, Monday Night Football game versus the Jets, who are literally the worst team in the league. Sorry if you're a Jets fan, but they're pretty bad. And all of their team is injured. The quarterback and everybody. This is our game, Browns fans. If we lose, then after that, I think we just need to say it's not meant to be for the Browns. I'm not sure, and thankfully the Buckeyes are looking really good, really good. So, I think we're going to be all right. It's going to be fun one way or another, and man. So there we go. How many of you, all of that, you could care less? Give me a big raise your hand. Look at all these people. You could care less. Once a year, we're going to dive in, and if you ever want to just get a little bit of excitement, I see Randy right here. You just need to go anywhere Randy's watching a Buckeye game, just with him. And if you just raise your hand, you will probably be like, what is wrong with that guy? Like, what? We can get really involved in it, and it's fun to see different people love different things. And somehow a whole bunch of us around this part of town, man, we love it. And it's good stuff. But this morning, we're going to be talking about going dark. Now, when you think of going dark, some of you in the room, you might say, oh man, maybe you struggle with anxiety or depression, and you think of darkness that direction. You think maybe many in the room would say it. At moments, there's been those places where you're really, really down. Maybe you've been in places where you just, all of a sudden, it feels like nothing is working. It feels like nothing's happening. Maybe you've actually had eye surgery, and you've actually not been able to see for a period of time, even a short amount of time. I've heard that's very nerve-wracking. That is very, very difficult. And when I think of going dark, the first thing that came to my mind, this is very serious, but it's recently, my wife and I, we bought a car, which is the newest car we've ever bought, and we're super excited. Our last car we bought, we paid $6,000 for, and then we paid $6,000 more to fix the car, and by the end of it, we put a lot of money into this little junky car. And this time we're going to buy a car, 4 years old, 50,000 miles on it. It's the nicest car I've ever owned in my life. I love it. I'm actually going to wash it. Like, that's pretty new. I don't normally do that. Like, we're going to wash this thing. We're going to keep it good. And I can just tell you, it's been kind of amazing. My new car, my car that I love, I think in the first week, I'm sure you won't even hardly believe this, but my children somehow basically keyed the side of my brand new car. I was in a dark spot. There were a few moments there. I had to decide, like literally, I had to decide what is my response going to be? Because I can tell you what I want my response to be, not very Christ-like. I was not exactly pumped. The only rules were don't go in the garage and don't go near the car. So what happens? In the garage, scratch the new car. Oh, Lord, help me. I think, Rachel, you'd have to ask her, but I think I did a fairly good job of Okay, so we made it through that. It couldn't have been 2 weeks later. I've never had this happen before. Somehow, I'm not real sure how, but I go into the garage and there is like a paint roller on a pole that is now laying on the hood of my brand new car, which seems like paint rollers have metal. It might not go well. I move it and there is like paint chips off. I'm like, it was really dark. Like, how hard can it be to not go in the garage and to not drop paint rollers and things onto the hood of the brand new car? How hard? Someone else is with me. They've been there before. How difficult can this be? I literally, real fast, I think the Lord did it on purpose. Within a month, I decided, as we all know, it's just a car. Who really cares? I can have fun with my car, but it's just a car. Right? So I said it. I started saying that, but it still wasn't quite feeling. I still wash it. Still looks good. You just can't look too close now. But then the other day, Rachel and I, we are sitting at McDonald's, and that's probably where we started going wrong, going to McDonald's, I don't know. But we're sitting at McDonald's, and we are there, and it's not windy. But somehow this lady opens her car door, and her door goes bam in the side of our car, like we could feel the car move. And I'm like, oh my goodness. What is happening? This doesn't seem possible. So I get out of the car. I was actually really, really calm. I walked around. Off of the nice ridge line of the side of my car, it took a good inch. And I'm like, and I just felt that God was like, just let the lady go. It's going to ruin her day. It's not that big a deal. It's just a car. And it was one of those moments where I was sitting there and I began to kind of think of all of these things that happen that are just random. Within the first, that was maybe 6 months now of our new car, realizing, you know what, car stuff, junk, it's all junk. It's going to be junk. If it's not now, it will be someday. I still wash it. Still try to keep it clean, still try to keep it looking good, but now there's a ding out of the side of it. There's scratches on the hood. There's like a key circle swirl. I'm not even sure how that's possible on the side of my car. No clue how that's possible, but it's there. And I just decided, you know what? This is not that big a deal. It's just a car. But there were moments in there where God had to super talk to me. What am I going to do? Am I going to go get all this stuff fixed? I'm going to pay money to it'll be fine. I don't want to get rusty, so I'll talk to Steve and be sure it's not going to rust out the side of my car. But, if we're fine, it's just a car. I begin to think in our life, in our spiritual journey, how often are there moments and times and situations where things just come at us and we're like, it's way more important than a car, way more important. But where things keep coming. It's like, what in the world? And where you have to recalibrate. And you've got to say, I don't even understand how this is possible, but Lord, I'm just going to keep plugging along. It's not that big a deal. Even big things, Lord, I'm going to give them to you. I'm going to put them in your hand. I'm going to offer them to you. I'm going to say, Lord, I'm going to let you do what you do. I began to think of sports as I was preparing for this message and going dark and this thought. And LeBron James, which was Cleveland's Savior's the wrong word at church when we're talking about Jesus and stuff, but he was a really cool basketball player, and then he left us for the second time. That's super bummer. But we won a championship with him, so that was really cool. But he did something that he would say he was going dark when it would get to playoffs. He'd put his phone, his Instagram, his Twitter, all that stuff that he would do, he'd put it away so that he could focus on what mattered to him in that moment, and that was winning a championship. A lot of people in sports, I saw some hockey jerseys in the house. A lot of those people, they won't shave their beard during the playoffs. And if they're in there a long time, some of them start with crazy beards, and some of them, by the time they get going, it might even be more than that, like season worth, their beards are crazy because it's like, this is our together. We're going dark. We're just going to go away from the norm. And you see people that they give everything, and they say, I'm going to give all that I am to a sport, to something that if you didn't know, just because we're wearing jerseys, matters not at all. Sports don't matter. It's fun. We love it. If you're a sport fan, it's really fun to cheer for teams. but it doesn't matter one bit. But they will change everything to try to win, to try to do the best they can, to get to that moment. And I believe God, many times in our life, he might at least allow moments where it feels like we're going dark that all of a sudden bring new life and new light into our life. There's moments when God begins to speak and God begins to move, and because he does, things change in us. Now this morning, we're going to look at Acts chapter 9, and this is the story of Saul, when Jesus shows up to Saul. Now, you want to know what going dark would be. This is the literal sense of it, and you're going to see as we read through and as we check it out. But we're going to look at the first 9 verses, and I'm just going to read this story for us before we jump in. So Acts 9, 1 through 9. It says, "But Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way," so those are the Christians, "men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven shone around him, and falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?' And he said, 'Who are you, Lord?' And he said, 'I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do.' The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one. Saul rose from the ground, and although his eyes were opened, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And for 3 days he was without sight." Now I think of football, and I think of sports, I think of the game plan. I think when there's those moments, if you're a sport fan, when your coach, your team, they just get it. They've got a plan. They've got the action. They know what they're going to do. They are ready to they're locked and loaded and ready to go. The game plan is there. And Paul here, we see he's got a game plan. A game plan that goes directly in the face of the things of God. He has a game plan. In fact, he asked the high priest, "Can I go and round up all the people, the Christians in Damascus, in those synagogues? Can I get them and bring them back?" Which would generally mean they're going to be beaten. They're going to be persecuted. They could even be put to death. He has a game plan of breathing threats, of bringing destruction to the disciples of the Lord. You can picture an angry, violent man, absolutely convinced of his own righteousness. He wasn't doing this apart from the church. He was doing this for the church in their day. Not the Christian portion, but for the synagogues, for the religious leaders. He wasn't doing something that was way out there, but he was being prodded on by the religious leaders of his day. Saul hated the disciples of the Lord. He hated them. He decided against Jesus. He decided against the things of God. Now, I got a couple quotes this week, and this one I absolutely love. But it's that you have to play this game like somebody just hit your mother with a 2x4. And if you're thinking football, how many of you have played football at some level? There's a bunch of you. If you go into football, Tariq, and you're like, well, I'm just going to kind of walk in here and hopefully everything goes well. I don't really want to hit anybody. It's not going to go well for you. You are going to die. You're going to get knocked out. In fact, you have to play this game like someone just hit your mother with a 2x4. You got to get a little bit mad. You've got to get a little bit aggressive. You've got to get excited. And I'll tell you what, Saul, before he turns to Paul later on, this dude, he was all in. There was nothing that would hold him back from doing what he felt he should do. He was all in. He wanted to get rid of the Christians. When I think of the game plan, man, he had it. He had a game plan. He had the plan. He had it all going up. But something happens. And I believe that each and every one of us at one moment, or then many more moments after that, I believe Jesus will break into and has broken into and will do it again into the game plan that is your life, where you think you are going, what you think God is doing. In fact, maybe even who you think God is. I believe Jesus is looking for opportunities to break in to your game plan. He's looking for opportunities to shake it up, to make it new, to make something radical. This would be a pretty radical story out of your life. And I believe he's looking for those opportunities when we are willing to step in and say, come on, let's do this. We've got this. I can make this happen because God is moving and God is speaking. Paul, in this case, he's not even looking for it, obviously. He's the opposite. He's going against it. He's going against what God would be doing. But there's a shakeup. Now, yesterday we were at Cedar Point, took a whole bunch of students to Cedar Point, and Cedar Point is super fun if you like roller coasters. If you're scared of heights or you have motion sickness or a lot of other things, it might not be a good place for you. Lots of really high, fun roller coasters. And one of the things that I love the most about going to Cedar Point, besides just standing in lines talking to students and being in the van talking to students, that's great. And Pastor Christian and Danielle, amazing job. They let me go as a leader, which was really nice, just being able to kind of be there instead of have any responsibility. Praise the Lord. It was great. But so we're standing there. We are getting on the line, and one of our students, I think I'm going to leave his name. We'll see if I say his name. It might slip out, but maybe not. But one of our students did not want to go on the certain ride that we were going to be going on, which happened to be the Raptor. So the Raptor is super fun. Yes, come on. Oh yeah, look at this. I like these people. I like you guys a lot. We need more of that in here. But we're about to get on the Raptor. The Raptor isn't overly tall. It's not overly fast because it couldn't be either one because it's just constant spins and loops and turns. So they're asked, is it fast? I'm like, well, compared to the Millennium Force, which goes 90-some miles per hour, it's slow. Compared to Top Thrill Dragster, it's like a quarter of that height. It's super, super small. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. It's slow, it's small, it's not very tall. And it's one of the most aggressive rides at Cedar Point, which is really great. So I might or might not have got this awesome student to get onto this ride. And I love sitting next to students when they are just screaming their heads off because they are scared to death. I would call it the shake-up, right? Come on. I love it. In fact, I've asked the Lord, it would be really fun. I sound like a terrible, I'm glad you guys are the youth pastors and not me, but I sound like, I've asked the Lord, it would be really fun just for a few moments to be scared of heights when I'm on a roller coaster where it literally scares me. Because it's not scary. My stomach goes, and you feel like you throw up and all that fun stuff. Is that fun? I don't know. But watching a kid get on a ride, it might have been your kids back there, Jen and Robert, just so you know. It was great. Super great. He is screaming, and I'm laughing my head off hysterically right next to him. It was such an amazing moment. It did I'm still riding the high from last night. That was our last ride. It was phenomenal. But there was a shakeup that happened. And then you get off of the ride, and not one time in all the years that I've gotten kids on the ride one way or another, have at the end, they're like, I wish I would not have done that. Not one time. Well, maybe once, but basically never. They're always like, that was awesome. I thought I was going to die. I didn't know what was going on. One time, a kid, actually another gross child, actually blacked out on the ride sitting next to me. He's like flopping around. It was amazing. The shakeup was really strong with that one. But every time they get off the ride and they're like, that was awesome. That was amazing. I can't believe I did it. Maybe they're scared to death. Then they're like, you lied to me. I'm like, no, I didn't. It was way slower than that ride, way shorter than that ride. There was no lying involved. Maybe some trickery, some other words we could throw in, but no lying was involved in getting you on this ride. And all of a sudden, Paul, he gets to a special moment when he's approaching Damascus, and all of a sudden, a crazy bright light shines from heaven. So it's in the midday, but this isn't the sun. This is way bigger, way crazier, way more amazing. And then heard a voice from heaven. He made the only choice that made any logical sense, and that was to fall down on the ground. He said, that's the end of that. I'm going to fall. I don't know if he really had the choice, but he did fall down to the ground. I would say a reaction of survival. He was terrified. Can you imagine if Jesus, the one you are persecuting, shows up to you on the road to Damascus when you're going to kill Christians. Can you just put yourself there? Can you imagine this moment? Your game plan is on point if you're against what God's doing. And all of a sudden, Jesus reveals himself, puts himself right in the middle of your situation. The only thing he could ask are pretty good questions. Who are you, Lord? That's a pretty good, if God's coming to you, you might want to ask, is this the Lord? In this case, it probably was fairly obvious. And the other one, Lord, what do you want me to do? We see that in Acts 22, verse 10, when he's talking about this happening, that he asked the question that matters the most. Lord, what do you want me to do? In fact, could we all practice that real fast? All together, let's say, Lord, what do you want me to do? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Lord, what do you want me to do? Let's do it one more time. Lord, what do you want me to do? We would do really well in life if that was like the first thing that we started every morning. Lord, what do you want me to do? When we get out of our car going to work, Lord, what do you want me to do? When our boss gives us a problem, we don't know what to do. That would be a great time to say, Lord, what do you want me to do? He may have been against God, against what Jesus was doing, but you know what he was for? Being smart enough that when God shows up, to ask the question that matters. Lord, what do you want me to do? I find it interesting that he is told in verse 6, but rise, enter the city, and you'll be told what to do. Does God ever respond to you in that sort of a way? You're like, Lord, what do you want me to do? You mean you want the 10-year plan in a nice color-coded chart on your wall. You want it all put together. And he's like, start the engine. You're like, I know I need to start the engine. Then he wants us to ask again. Anybody else, it feels like there's those moments of direction. You're like, Lord, I want the end result. I need to know where I'm going. And he's like, get up and go next step. Then get up and go next step. And I can guarantee you there's a whole lot of people in this room right now. You feel like you're in that next step spot. You're like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And all we have to do is say, Lord, what do you want me to do? And then be willing to do what he says. Be willing to listen. Be willing to go. And in sports, there's a lot of times when the coach says, this is what we're doing. And a player can disagree. A player cannot like the play. A player can think we should throw whatever you say the word, Mary. You throw the ball a long way down the field. Every single play. That sounds fun to a fan. But guess what? It doesn't work, which is why the coach doesn't call that play every single time. Super exciting. And you'd never win a football game because it wouldn't work, because it would be defended. We must listen to what God has and be willing to say, Lord, I don't need to know everything. I don't have to know much. I just need to know, what do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next? In fact, let's say that all together. Lord, what do you want me to do next? That word is very important. Lord, what do you want me to do next? Now, in this moment, Saul has some big sorts of decisions. Saul, all of a sudden, is not seeing very well. Saul, all of a sudden, has met Jesus. He probably had seen Jesus in the synagogue. He'd probably been a part. I mean, he was right in the same time frame. Almost for sure, he had been around Jesus before. There's a good chance that even when Jesus starts talking, that he's like, oh man, I recognize that voice. He might have known who, I bet he knew before he even asked the question, because he had been around him somewhat, almost for sure. But there's a choice that he had to make. And the next quote that I found that I love, and part of my team came up with some of these awesome quotes, but is, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. Right? We can generally be like, yeah, my 4-year-old wants a nightlight. I can understand. Our water softener comes on in the middle of the night. That is kind of loud and creepy, and it makes weird noises. I can understand wanting to see what's going on, right? But the real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. It's not about being afraid of the dark, but it's about being afraid of the light. It's about being afraid of a shakeup in our life, because I don't know what God is going to do. I don't know what God is going to speak. What happens if I give myself to him? What happens if I give my future to him? What happens if I change what I thought my plan was to line up with what I feel he's telling me my plan is now? What do I do? Am I afraid of the light? So I think all of us at times, we're afraid of a roller coaster, we're afraid of the dark, or we're afraid of not knowing how we're going to pay a bill, or we're afraid of when all of a sudden maybe cancer's in our family or there's some sickness or disease. Guess what? That's scary. But Lord, would you then give us the wisdom to hear you? Would you give us the wisdom to maybe struggle sometimes with things in our life and have to bring them to God? But then, Lord, don't let me ever be afraid of what you're doing and how you're speaking. When you show up, when you reveal your will, Lord, let me never be afraid to say yes to the things of God. We've got to be willing to let him shake up some stuff in our life. Now, the result of this is going dark. We head into verses 7. It says, the men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one. Whoa, what is going on? Saul rose from the ground, and although his eyes were opened, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And for 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank. Now, when I read this, I just think it is phenomenal. I don't want him to do this to me per se, but it's phenomenal that God says this guy who is so spiritually blinded, that is so against the things that I have, that is so against the truth of the Bible, no matter what our own opinion is or my own thought is, that how he didn't accept Jesus. He was all for the Pentateuch and for the old things, but not Jesus. And it is so amazing that that's the guy that he would choose to have come to Damascus. And that's the guy he would show in a bright light. That's the guy that he would blind. The guy who was so spiritually blinded. Begin to think of this. It's almost like poetic justice or something. But way more than that, do you think Paul, before this, right now he's Saul, he's not Paul yet. Do you think Saul, if Jesus just showed up and said, hey, maybe you should do a little different? Guess what? I don't think Saul is going to make a life change. I think Saul required God showing up in his life with a little bit more gusto than just a still small voice, because his game plan was the opposite direction. So is it not amazing that the God of the universe would come to Saul, who was the most probably religious, against the things of God, but religious, and blind him so that he had 3 days to think and to pray and to talk to God, where he couldn't get distracted because he couldn't get up and do anything. He wasn't born blind. He didn't understand how to be blind. He didn't know what to do. So he sat and thought and he prayed. And I believe that God is so gracious that no matter where we've been or what we've done or what situations we've gone through, I believe that God will come and reveal himself how we need to see him so that we can make the answer, take the step and say yes to God. But you know what Saul, in this moment, you know what he could have done? Later on, next week, or in 2 weeks, actually, we're going to get back in and see the rest of the story. He could have said no to God. He could have got his eyesight back and said, nah, I think I'm good. I'm going to arrest all of you. In fact, we're going to see, it's scary when the guy who's coming after you to kill you, when you give him his sight back. That's a big choice. Lord, I don't know if that's really smart. But God gave the wisdom, and Saul made the right choice. But in our life, when God breaks through, when there's those moments where maybe I feel like I've gone dark and God begins to speak, everything else is quiet around me. Am I going to say yes to what God is doing? Am I going to say yes to who he is? Am I going to say yes to life change? Am I going to say yes to the word of God becoming more powerful and more active than any cultural thing that would come against me? What society would say, or what news would say, or what the people at my school would say, or my work would say? Does the Bible trump everything? And if it does, then when God comes before us, it's not too difficult to say, Lord, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'm in, because I don't really care how it's going to work. Because if it's your direction and your will for my life, then change up my game plan. Shake it up any time you want. Anytime you want me to maybe have some moments of blindness where I don't know, so I've got to focus on you, so I'll listen to you. Lord, please do it, because I don't want to be going off even a little bit of your glory or from where you have me, from your plan. I want to be in the fullness, which means, Lord, if I need to sit in silence, if I need to quiet myself, if I literally need to go dark and not be able to do anything but to sit, Lord, I'm willing because I want to say yes to you and yes to the things of your kingdom. I keep saying Paul, and it just keeps slipping out. But Saul, he became one of the greatest missionaries. He wrote half of the New Testament. He was an evangelist. He turned from a terrorist of Christians to one of the greatest evangelists of all time. Saul, amazing man of God. But it didn't start that way. It didn't look that way. He wasn't qualified. He should have been nowhere near an evangelist. But we're going to learn as we go through the next few verses and chapters. Immediately, his life changed. Immediately, he began to speak and preach and proclaim the message of Jesus. Because when Jesus breaks through, the things that we put, the things I put, the things that are in my mind, that a car could be more important than a person. That's crazy. But it's so easy to let a car or even a sports team or to let my house or to let my stuff or to let anything, you fill it in. You like having control, so your tongue, maybe the things you say, box people in. Anything. Lord, would you take those things? Would you shake it up? Because I don't want to be there. It's not because I tried. I don't believe Saul was looking to go against God. He thought he was doing the best he could. And finally, when God broke through, it changed everything. Now I'm encouraging you today. I believe you're here at Radiant Life Church because you're doing the best you can. But you know what I believe for myself and every single one of us? I believe God has more. I believe God has greater things. I believe God has a shakeup that's coming. And then I'm believing tomorrow, another shakeup. I'm believing tomorrow afternoon for my life. I want to keep the shakeup happening where I'm like, Lord, not my will, not my desire, not what I think, not what I think I know, but Lord, what you have is what I'm all in on. So Lord, I don't need a blinding light. I just need a still small voice. And when I hear it, I'm going to act on it. When you show yourself, when I get in the Word in the morning, when I get in the Word and I'm studying, all I need to do is read it. And I'm going to change what I've thought before because the Word of God is real, it's active, it's powerful, and it's words of life for you. There's something that changes when we see the bright light of heaven, and whether in your life it comes through like Paul, or whether in your life it comes through like most of us. And there's just a little knock at the door of your spirit. There's just a little bit of a prick of your spirit that says, I'm here, I love you. When we turn to him, the shakeup happens. And going dark, listening to the voice of God, it leads to light. It leads to power. It leads to authority. Another quote, football is not a contact sport, it's a collision sport. And I believe in my spirit, there's times when I need to make our walk with God a contact sport. A collision sport. I need to run head on into what's going on in my life. I need to make it happen. Just like the beginning, like someone hit my mama with a 2x4. That's how I want to run at the things of the Spirit and say, I'm going to go after God with everything within me. I'm not going to be a dancer that's just going to have, there's contact, things take place, but I'm going to run collision head on. And I want to see some pancake blocks today, tomorrow night with the Browns. I want to see some people just leveled because they are all in. But way more than any sporting event is I want to see my life and your life at a place where we are all in and we will never stop. We'll never keep pushing, lining up with the word and the message of the gospel. That's what it's all about this morning. As we close this morning, all over this room, if you would just bow your head, I want to give an opportunity this morning. If you say, I maybe not have been living how the Lord would have me to live. Maybe this is the first time that you've been in a church in a long time and God is speaking. Not because of a pastor on a stage, but because of the Word of God becoming real and active. Because the God of the universe is shining a light in your spirit. And you say, I want to be a part of what God is doing. Or maybe this morning you're here and you say, I've served the Lord, but I just am not where I need to be. And I need to make a turn. I need to turn back to Him. I need to let His glory shine forth in my life. I need to just, maybe even it's just small things. It's not about your salvation, but it's about I need God this morning. And we're going to do it all together. And if you'd say, I'm in one of those, I need to make a turn, or this morning I want to give my life to Jesus for the very first time. What do you do? Just kind of crazy, kind of not, because everyone's head's down. But would you just raise your hand all over this room? If you say, that's me, one of those areas. I need to make my life right, or I need to just say, Lord, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in more. I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to the light. Maybe he's speaking. So in this section over here, is there anybody you'd say, that's me? I want to raise my hand. I want to commit once again to the things of God. Come on. Yes, right here in this section, the middle right section. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Anybody else that you'd say, that's me? Yes. Thank you. I'm either giving my life or I just need to make some tweaks and listen to the voice of God. Right here in the sound booth section. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Anybody else? You'd say, that's me. Anybody over here in the far section, you say, I don't want to leave anything on the table. I want to be all in with the message of God. Yes, thank you. As a group, I'm going to ask that we just would all pray together. As we close out this time, as we go eat some food, as we have a great time just fellowshipping, this is what it's all about. Is, Lord, I want to experience you, and I want to go dark if that's what it takes, so that I can have true life and true light. So as a group, if you would repeat after me. Dear Jesus, we love you. We once again commit ourselves to you. Commit ourselves to your spirit. Commit ourselves to your truth. Help us hear you and experience you from a small voice to a bright light. Shake us up. Help us get in with you. And help us shine your light to our world. We thank you. We praise you. And we worship you today. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Come on. Good stuff. The Lord is good. I just want to encourage, get in this word, the word of God, as many days as you can. If you miss a day or a week or a month, guess what you should do? The next day or week or month, get back in the word. It's life-changing. It's what this is all about. No building or offering or bulletin or any of that stuff really makes any difference. The word of God is powerful.